Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Tara, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 1. It's called Strange New Worlds. They really put a lot of thought into the title of this one. But yes, this is a brand new Star Trek show focusing on the Enterprise, captained by Christopher Peck, and this is set before the original series, but it's also a sequel to Discovery, or a spin-off to Discovery. It references a few of the events of Season 2 of that show, which, I'll be honest, was a little hard to take at first, because I'm like, oh my god, that was so long ago. Like, Season 2 of Discovery was like eons ago. I don't remember any of this shit.
You just need to rewatch it like I do.
I don't know. We'll see. So that's what we're going to talk about. And it is a first episode, technically. Well, it's not technically, it is a first episode, but despite the fact that this is a new spin-off, I still think we start a little spoiler-free, just to give some general impressions to see if people, want to know if they should check it out or not. And I will give the warning before we go into spoilers. But yes, the premise is simple. It's the Enterprise. It's probably the one that's going to be most like traditional Star Trek, because it's going for more of an episodic style structure, and it's all the only difference is it's Pike. It's Pike from Discovery, leading the charge. So that's what the show is. It's straightforward enough.
We got new Star Trek. So exciting.
And we have a first contact style situation in this first episode, which we'll get into in spoilers. But what did you think of episode 1 of Strange New Worlds?
It's pretty great.
Yeah, but like, you think a lot of new Trek's pretty great, and it's not pretty great. So is this really pretty great, or like?
It's a very strong start. I wouldn't say it's like perfect. I mean, obviously it's a 10, but like I wouldn't say it's perfect. It's not my favorite like pilot episode, but it's pretty strong, and they take a lot of lessons from the shows that have not been as popular, I think, by making this one. And you could tell there's a lot of input about like, okay, what do the people who don't like these other new Treks want to see? They all really liked Pike, except for that one girl, which would be me.
Yes.
And so, it's a very satisfying episode of television, of Star Trek, and hour of TV.
Yes, I felt a lot of potential in this first episode. It's not perfect, as you said. There's definitely some things you can nitpick at if you want, but this was very refreshing after the let's just say the straight up turd that season 2 of Picard slowly regressed into in the back half of it. Now, I've not watched the finale yet. We're reviewing that in the next couple of days.
I can't wait till you watch it.
So I don't know how I feel about the finale yet. I've not watched it. But Strange New Worlds is such a breath of fresh air, because it gave me an episode story. It ended. There's obviously some character things that are going to continue forward, and that's cool. But even stuff like, I wasn't really into young Spock last time I saw him. And I don't really like him that much when I think of him as Spock, but when I just think of him as he's the character who's there to be this character to Pike, he's all right. Like, he's fine. Like, he's fine in the show. It's just, I just don't like that he's Spock.
It's a lot of the same feelings I get when I watch the Kelvin universe stuff too.
Sure, yeah, because that's the weird thing, is that this is technically supposed to be a prequel to the original series, but because they're referencing Discovery getting into the future, and they're referencing kind of like some of the stuff that's set up, it does kind of feel like we're in a new timeline branch with this. Because, fundamentally, like, this ship, while you're going for the feel of the original series, it's too high-tech for me to believe that this is going to lead to Shatner and so on.
There's too many bars of lights everywhere.
Yes.
All the lighting in the show is just so impractical to me. Like, I hate having this ring light here. Like, it makes me look amazing, but, like, I don't like looking at just bars of light, I think it's such an inconvenient way to light a ship. Or light a room, just having strips of fluorescent light everywhere.
Hey, it's the look they're going for, but at least at least in design though, the bridge does feel more akin in spirit to the original Enterprise.
It's more colorful.
Yeah.
It's less. It looks like they're utilizing the space a lot better. Stuff like that. Yeah.
So there is like a weird disconnect there, but once you sort of like let that go and just sort of go with, this is the new timeline now and we're focusing on this. One of the big things that comes from Discovery is this is a Pike who saw a glimpse of his future, and if you've seen the original Star Trek series, you know that his future is kind of depressing, and he ends up in this weird chair with his face all kind of half melted and whatever.
Yeah. One of the best things in season 2 actually was just connecting those two things together.
Yeah. So we have this version of Pike who has to deal with the fact that he's seen a glimpse of this. And honestly, I'm at the point where they might like pull something by the end of the show when they eventually have to deal with this, where maybe like he circumvents is the word I'm trying to say. Circumvents it and almost like creates a new timeline in part because of it to like give us a happier conclusion to his character. I mean, they don't have to do that, but
my expectation would be that they just end the show before he has to deal with that, because I think that's still like a decade away. You know, so I think anyway, because the Discovery takes place 10 years before, roughly 10 years before, you know, the original series of Star Trek.
Oh, right. So, okay. Yeah. That's a good point.
So I'm thinking there's still time, like, you know, unless the show really does go like 9 seasons or whatever. I think if they wanted to, they could just, you know, we know what's going to happen to him, still try to end the show on a high, and maybe leave an open ending to whether or not he can avoid it rather than just show us. Just to like please the fans and not screw up canon anymore.
I think the other thing that's weird when connecting them, all this Discovery stuff that they kind of mentioned, which it does feel though that's like, that'll fade as time goes on. I don't think that its connections to Discovery are going to be that important after a while. I feel like if we get 3 seasons into this,
I think it was in this episode just because it's the pilot.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, other than him having this glimpse of the future, I don't think most of it's going to be that important going forward. Like, there's an awkward moment early on in this where Spock mentions that he misses his sister, and I'm like, oh, that felt weird.
Yeah, and there's a couple other moments also later on, but like, the whole Spock and Michael Burnham thing never really bothered me, but like,
it always just felt shoehorned to me. But you know, it is what it is. The other thing though that kind of does feel a little disconnect to, if you are trying to in your head connect this to the original series, and it's not to say that I don't like the new version of this character or characters in this, but like Nurse Chapel, for example, in this show is very likable, but she has so much personality, and I'm thinking back to the original series and I'm like, she just stood there and did what McCoy told her to do. There was no
no, this is a good change.
Yeah, it's not a bad change, but it's like I can't in my head connect this is the woman who becomes that woman in the original series, you know? Like,
maybe she also has a Pike moment or something, and she's just super depressed for after I don't know, maybe she just got rejected by Spock too many times. And
you know, we beat a young Uhura in this episode, and I liked her well enough. I thought she had
one of the best scenes in the show. Yeah.
I think what I'd say about this first episode is that it does some fundamental things that feel right for any other flaws it might have. One is that there's 3 or 4 central characters that feel like the main 3 or 4, right? You got Pike, you've got Spock, you've got the first, who's not in a lot of the episode, first officer, that is. Yeah. But then you have the sort of acting first officer in this episode, Noonien Singh, who they feel like they're going to be the central characters who most of the plots are about. But then you have your secondary characters, much like the original series, which is Uhura, you've got the pilot, Ortigas, I think her name was, and you've got the doctor who's kind of in that tier with Nurse Chapel. These feel like a solid B tier, as opposed to on Discovery, where for seasons and seasons, like after one episode, these feel like, even though they're secondary characters, they feel like established secondary characters. Whereas, like, even now after 4 seasons of Discovery, I'm like, who's that one dude?
I know. Bryce and Reese.
Bryce and Reese, yeah.
Don't know which one, but
yes.
No, I totally understand, and it felt it's exactly the same thing when I watched this episode. It was just like, wow, I really know who all the characters are. And
already, one episode in. Look, I'm not great.
I mean, they have an unfair advantage because so many of them we already know from the original series.
Some of them. Yeah, like obviously Uhura and Chapel.
And there's a couple that beam in afterwards that we haven't really met yet.
Which is smart.
Yet.
Yeah, which is smart because it's like, okay, you tease this Andorian crew member, but we can focus.
They're not called Andorian; they're called something else. But
sure, but we can focus on introducing them in episode 2. So we're like, you have enough time to establish. It's impressive how many they establish in this episode compared to Discovery, which couldn't do it in 4 seasons. But you know, like they establish a good handful of characters who have enough personality that I get who they are, right? And there's there's a small moment where Uhura,
I like them.
yeah, they're likable. There's a small moment where Uhura and Chapel meet in one scene, and it's a nice enough little like, oh hey, I'm the new nurse by the way, and there's like a little moment, and it's like, oh, that was a likable interaction, and in that one scene it showed that Uhura is good at certain things because she had we'll get into the spoilers who it is and why and all that, but because she has, other than that, she has like, hey, you're the new cadet, switch the comms on. Like that's like her thing until this one scene later where she gets a little bit more to do, and it's like, okay, that's fine for now because later on we can give her a little bit more and they feel like established characters, and I appreciated that. So I think on a fundamental level I like that. I like the problem they mainly go to solve. I did laugh out loud at something that was a little hysterical because Star Trek is guilty of breaking one main rule that it always talks about. And so even though I was like, I kind of agreed with the decision in this episode by and large, I thought what was set up, it made sense for the choice to be made.
Yeah.
I still laughed when the words, screw the order number one, whatever it used to be
General
called.
Order number one.
Yeah, before the Prime Directive name, which they actually set up by the end of the episode that they're changing to that. Because
Pike, that's your legacy.
Because I'm pretty sure that me and Connor got confused at one point in Discovery. We were like, what's the difference between General Order 1 and Prime Directive? Is it the same thing, or is it part of the Prime Directive? And it turns out
it's what they always called it in Enterprise, because Enterprise is a prequel.
Yeah, I see.
Well, they didn't really. Actually, I shouldn't say that because they didn't really have a General Order number 1. So, like, I think, I don't know if it's by the end of the episode. There's definitely an episode about it.
Okay, where it's created. Yeah, okay.
Where, the idea of it kind of comes up. So, and then that turned into General Order number 1 in Discovery. But like, there's a progression, for it.
So yeah, I don't mind saying that. I don't think that's much of a spoiler to say that they're going to switch to Prime Directive. I mean, there's a little joke about it, which you can chuckle at if you want, but
yeah.
But
I mean, it's kind of a dumb rule in Star Trek anyway. That's why it gets broken so much.
I mean, I like it as a sort of principle, but like obviously context demand that you change on it. You have to change it sometimes, and I do think the reason why they change it in this is completely solid. And I'm okay with it, and I'll explain in spoilers why I actually think some of Pike's more radical moves towards the end of the episode actually I think makes sense, for the character, but also for the situation they're in and the people they're talking to. So
yeah, and for the central theme of this episode.
Yeah, so dare I say this might have been a success? I mean, at least the first episode. I mean, this could all go down the toilet in episode 2. Yeah. It could.
I have heard that, a lot of reviewers and stuff got like the first 3 episodes, and they're not allowed to talk about what comes next. They all seem pretty positive about what they've seen so far.
The first 3,
Of course, I've I only watch people who tended to say positive things about Star Trek.
Well, so not me?
I tolerate you.
Yeah, so... and I didn't love everything. There's like a little bit of before they go on the ship, there's like some sort of personal stuff for Spock that I just kind of thought was whatever,
Yeah, that stuff kind of bothered me only because it sort of breaks canon a bit. And, I know a lot of people think that Discovery breaks canon all the time, but they always throw in some kind of line to where you go, okay, I can see why they're bending it here. But like, this one's just kind of blatant. On what they do here, unless I don't know if like the writers were like, well, this just sounds better or looks better, but so the fans can get over it, or if they just didn't realize. But I don't know, like it's something I remember, and I'm not great at the original series. Like I watched it a lot when I was a kid, but like a lot of the details are kind of gone.
Yeah,
but I remembered this one detail.
It's not even the continuity thing that I mean that's mainly because I don't remember what it's contradicting, but but for me it was more just kind of like, oh, we're doing like romantic stuff with Spock and his home planet, and it means that there's a lot of just like we're doing the big green screen shots of him looking out at the Vulcan Ocean and things like that, and it's like this is a bit of the sort of stuff that I remember not liking from Discovery season 1. We would get a lot of the Klingons and stuff like we don't necessarily need as much of this, but once he was with Pike and once they were interacting and like his Vulcan physiology like started interfering with their plan and the plot, like there was some fun stuff to be had there, and it like he played off the other character well enough. I actually really like Noonien Singh. I think I got a lot out of her.
I thought she was a standout as well. Yeah.
I thought her sort of tough-headedness, kind of like always challenging Pike and not afraid to like being, you two are acting like idiots, so you're not catching on quick enough, and I was kind of into that.
I like that she's the big security person on this, so you get shades of Tasha Yar with a horrible backstory about why she's such a badass now, but like it's not rape gangs.
Well, no, it's actually,
I think that's nice.
I mean, that's great, because that was one of those things where me and Connor got to that episode in the original series, the next gen, sorry, not the original series, where we just sort of went, "What did you just say? Rape gangs? Planet full of rape gangs?" It was
a rape gang planet.
It was such a absurdly.
It's like, what's the two worst things that we can think of that a woman has to like survive? Oh, rape gangs. We'll just put those together.
Yeah, it was just such an absurdly dark thing to throw out there. But the thing is this character's dark backstory is something from Star Trek lore they're having fun with and saying, this is a Gorn incident. So, whatever, cool. So we'll get into that. I guess the other question before we go into spoilers and talk about all that stuff is, you didn't like Pike in Discovery, so I'm curious, did you feel any better in this episode with him?
Well, okay, the thing with Pike in Discovery is, like, he kind of came aboard the ship after Lorca, and so he was written to be what I felt like was a like stepdad, like someone coming in to like be the father that they all needed to be, and it wasn't very captainy, and I don't know, like it came off as like he didn't really do very much in the show. He was just kind of like a generic, attractive, older white guy who's in a gold shirt. Like he's fulfilling the role that people who complained about the show for the wrong reasons were like, he kind of like, the writers were like, well, here you go. Here's the guy that you want. And so everybody liked him right away. And I was just like, I don't know. He doesn't do anything. There's nothing interesting about him. But they did do a cool storyline with him. And I like that. I just didn't like his acting or his character depiction in Discovery. I see why like people attach to him though. Like he is kind of charming. And in this episode, I felt less of that. Maybe it's because he's not in Discovery, where like I like Discovery and I especially like the first 2 seasons. And I just didn't I don't know. I didn't gel with it. But here this is his own show and I thought he did a very good job. And he has some character moments that I really enjoyed in this too.
Yeah, I liked a lot of his character beats in this, and if they're trying to win you over, having the episode start with him watching Day the Earth Stood Still to set up some,
a good way to start.
Set up some thematic links. It's the big speeches about the world, and the nuclear bombs and stuff. Like, it's really good stuff. But yeah, I suppose the other thing I would mention before we get to spoilers is just some aesthetic stuff, like obviously they're relying way more on the traditional Star Trek music and stuff in this one. They don't, but there is more of a stylized sort of bent to the old classic theme in the opening title sequence. But I do generally like this opening title sequence more than the other new Trek shows.
I really like Discovery's theme. Picard's theme grew on me. I think the season 2 one was even better.
But
I like the theremin on this one, but this one I can't like even think about what I heard. I thought it was like it's trying to go into the original series and then it does its own thing, but its own thing I can't remember like a lick of it. So maybe it'll grow on me over time.
I don't know. The theremin won me over.
Theremin was a good choice.
Yeah, I noticed this one started with like a new Star Trek kind of like almost like Marvel have their intro logo that plays before everything.
Yeah,
it feels like now Star Trek's get that starting with this show, because they had this like the Enterprise sweeps in, the big Star Trek logo comes up. So
I think that's what Paramount Plus knows what it is now. It's the Star Trek app. And maybe like Yellowstone or something. I think that show's popular.
They've got a couple other things.
Is that Paramount or is that
that's Paramount?
CBS? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think the main Yellowstone was on something else, but the
I want
spin-off...
to say it was on Peacock also or something, because I was looking at that app earlier to see what was free still.
Oh, sure. No, but I mean, the spin-off is... Because it's Paramount who make it, and the spin-off is definitely made for Paramount Plus, so...
Okay.
They're definitely doing some other things. They're trying to, right?
They got some Godfather show, too, I want to watch. The
Oh,
Offer.
yeah. About the making of The Godfather, yeah. So... Yeah, let's get spoilers then. So we're going to talk now. So spoilers for the first episode if you want to keep clear. But you know, the episode opens with what seems like they do a little sort of twisteroo here, where you're following like the back of someone as they're walking into like some military area with like, you know, computers and stuff, a control room. But then, and they're talking about, oh, there's some sort of UFO in the sky. But then when the camera spins round, you get like a sort of Twilight Zone-esque reveal. Oh no, we're on an alien planet, and the UFO, it's not the Enterprise, but it's like a starship from the Federation.
It's got nacelles, so you know, you know what you're looking at.
And it's like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And you're getting like a bit of a speech. It's like, you know, what's her face? Rebecca Romijn, you know, talking about First Contact. And this is kind of the setup of the episode where this clearly goes wrong, and they sort of say, hey, Pike, we're taking the Enterprise out sooner than expected because you need to go and rescue your first officer because she was on active duty and there's no contact. So... You know? I thought
that was a really cool opening where we get first contact, but from the other perspective.
Yeah. Over
this speech of, you know, number one, talking about how science fiction inspires, because eventually it won't be science fiction, and then it follows like right into, you know, Pike watching The Day the Earth Stood Still, a science fiction film that which basically.
Which predates even Star Trek. That
right.
was before the original series, yeah.
Right, yeah. And that's and it turns out that film actually is like the theme of the episode. It
really did surprise me.
Which I thought was really clever once they started to, you know, piece it together.
It would surprise me if that movie was even an influence on the original Star Trek, you know.
Well, I think the writer wrote for the original series, and Gene Roddenberry had stated that was like one of his favorite films, which makes sense. So
yeah, it was. It absolutely was an influence then. That's neat. But
it's either the writer or the director. I can't remember which.
But yeah, so you're interested. And we see like he's got like a captain lady friend that he spent the night with, and she's worried about him because he won't talk about what he's going through.
She was kind of lame.
I didn't mind her so much. Like she's kind of there for the future because we're going to see her again, obviously. I think it moved on quick enough that I didn't feel like, because it was more about what he was going through. So I was like, okay, this is fine. It's not, because this wasn't trying to make it about, because this is what annoyed me about the Spock scenes with his like future bride, who apparently the Vulcans, the woman, asked the men to marry them. But
it's not though, because it's supposed to be arranged from birth.
Ah, there you go. Oh, that's right. It's the ritual. Yes, I remember the ritual. Yeah, okay. But anyway, but what I liked about this is that it wasn't, at least in comparison to that, this was purely about his hesitance, because basically she immediately says, you should be a captain, we're both captains, you should be out in a ship, and so I'll come back, and when I'm on leave I'll come back and see you again if you're here, but I kind of hope you're not, because you should be out there in the stars. That's what you're supposed to be doing. So the whole point is just to set up that he's hesitant, he's thinking about his potential death, and it scared him a little of going back out, but obviously he's convinced A, he's given an order, but B, someone he cares about may be in trouble, so there's that double motivation to sort of get him to shave the big beard and go out. So it's clearly been at least a year since Discovery season 2, because he's grown a pretty big beard.
I think it's only been like 3 months.
That is such a bushy beard for 3 months.
Yeah, but they have ways, like maybe it's like a depression beard, but like he's definitely like used some sort of hair growth, laser that they have in the future.
Why would they speed up the beard?
It's cold where he is. Some more insulation.
Maybe his lady friend just likes beards, so he's like, I'll get a beard for you.
He's like, look, I'm riding horses, I'm in the mountains, I got a log cabin, I can't not have a beard.
I am a man. Like a proper man.
Yeah, that was a bit much.
Yeah,
because it was giving me like Kirk vibes also.
Oh sure, but I did like the classic style shuttle, but with obviously like a modern spin to it, like flying in to see him.
Yeah, but it flew way too close to that horse.
Oh, the poor horse was terrified. Yeah, But I did like, well, maybe it's a little on the nose, but that's because the whole idea is that the guy's basically giving him a speech which is like, you have to get back on the horse. And it literally ends with, get back on the horse, but it's like a double meaning because it's like, get back on the ship.
It was cute.
That's, but
that's Robert April, who is was mentioned in Discovery.
Okay.
But, like, he was the original captain of the Enterprise.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
And then when he became admiral, Pike took over. That's
a bit of lore then. I was not. Is that from the original series, or was that just something Discovery added on?
So actually, it's from the animated series. But Discovery had it like when Saru's doing like the list of captains that have all had like accommodations and stuff. He's one of the names that are listed, and everyone went, "Oh my god, the animated series is canon because of that."
Oh, neat. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I did love the homage to the motion picture when he's flying towards the ship. It's very motion. One of the shots is directly like, as it's coming around the corner to the front. Like, it's very much that same shot of the Enterprise.
Yeah, not quite long enough, but
oh sure, yeah. Like, it almost hurt because they play a little bit of the original series theme, right? But because they were homaging the motion picture, I really wanted to hear Jerry Goldsmith's motion picture music when it
the
was
best
ramping
theme
up.
Ever.
Yeah. Because obviously that theme is then used as the main theme for Next Generation, but Next Generation's version's a lot quicker. I really like the slow, like, coming in version of the movie.
Yeah, they really should have taken at least 15 minutes to savor the shots of the Enterprise.
I don't think there's a reason given for why he's flying up in a shuttle but then beams in when he's like, 20 feet from the Enterprise.
I don't know. Like, why do they even have shuttles?
In case the transporter beams break down.
Exactly. It should just be for emergencies.
Well, in the movie, it made sense because the transporter wasn't working yet. That's why he was taking a shuttle up. But they never mentioned that here. But then he beams on. So I was like, oh, well, so it's working then, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Maybe it's convenient to have like a drop off. No, it does see. It's way more convenient just to transport everywhere.
If there was a line saying, hey, we just got the transporters online, then fair enough.
Oh, yeah, cut my trip short. Just transport me in now. Yeah.
But he didn't. He just sort of said it as if he was expecting to transport in. So, whatever. I appreciated the ship porn, regardless. But yeah. No, I like meeting the crew and everything. And his phrase, his hit it. He says hit it. Which I'm sure was in Discovery, I just don't remember it, but that's his thing. I think
so. Pike in the Kelvin movie says punch it. I don't understand why everyone just doesn't say engage. I mean, Picard says it, Janeway says it, maybe Sisko says it, I don't know. There wasn't really a ship.
He's on a station, so why would he say?
They get like a little ship for the Defiant for a bit, but like, I don't know, like, just say engage.
Surely Sisko's thing should be remain and then just walk out.
Nice. I mean, it just makes sense, like, especially because Discovery, like, because every time they rotated a captain, they're like, okay, what's their thing going to be? What are they going to say? Just say engage. Like, we'll all be happy if you just say engage.
Yes. I don't know what to tell you. So obviously Spock goes to give a heart-to-heart with him because he senses that there's something wrong with him. They mentioned they can't talk about stuff, even to the Admiral, because only people who knew about the Discovery are allowed to talk about it.
It's classified, yeah.
But they get to the planet, and it's like, okay, they immediately fire on them. They figure out the planet's on this massive civil war that's been going on for a long time, and the big interesting thing is the reason why the other ship even came here is because they detected a warp signature. But what the Enterprise discovers and Spock discovers is that the Enterprise, or the warp signature, sorry, isn't that of a warp drive, because normally that's why they're ready for first contact because they're about to basically have the ability to travel large distances in space, so it's time to sort of introduce ourselves and bring them into the fold, right? That's the whole idea of first contact. Yeah. But here, it's actually the same type of like energy and technology has been used to make weapons instead. And it doesn't make much sense once they think about it and look at the rest of the technology, because they don't really have much space travel yet. They're not really they're about a century behind this technology. Why do they have it? And this comes into play later, because it turns out that when they sent the Discovery into the future, that giant warp wormhole thing, like, basically they have the telescopes like Earth would have done in the 20th century to see it. So they basically backdated, the technology a little bit and figured this out.
Yeah, and I've heard some complaints like, well, you can't make technology just from looking at something, but like, we have we have telescopes that don't just look at, the visual spectrum. So they could have just seen warp signatures or like some sort of energies that were left behind. And then maybe be able to deduce, kind of like, people see an atomic bomb and they're like, okay, well, how do we make an atomic bomb?
Yeah, even if it just inspires the idea. Yeah, like I can buy it. Just got someone thinking, what created that amount of energy?
Right.
And maybe the telescopes can read certain things, like maybe thermals, maybe whatever, and enough clues.
Stuff off the visual spectrum that maybe they'd be able to pick up residue of like some elements that have been left behind.
This is really not a concern to me. This part of it.
Cool. I watched a couple of reviews and that was like a nitpick on all of them. Like, oh, come on, guys! Like, science can work that way. Like,
I'm okay with them.
I love this beat because as soon as Spock says they built a bomb, I went, oh my God, they're doing the day the Earth stood still. I love this.
Yeah. Now Pike gets to come in and be the alien.
He's Klaatu, yeah.
I liked a lot of things about this. Obviously, we'll get to the whole planet sneak in because that's all just kind of some little fun plot. But the actual main sort of story beats of the episode, what I like about it is that, okay, at a certain point, he's like, okay, screw General Order 1 because we already influenced this planet. We already screwed it up. They've already taken technology they weren't supposed to have, and they're going to use it to kill each other because they've made bombs out of it. So we have to try and influence them in a better way now, right? That's just the way it is. I'm fine with that logic. It's weird. It's a little weird to do it in episode 1 of your Star Trek show because it's kind of a joke that they always throw it out the window, but whatever, right? Other than that aside, I'm fine with it. And then he meets he says, take me to your leader. Again, reference to the Earth still. And
is like, aliens in general.
Yeah.
Take me to your leader.
So he goes to see the Queen / Emperor / President of like the more
the leader.
Yeah, of one side of this conflict. And explains that he's from Earth and yada yada yada. And what I really liked about this is that he tries to say, no, we use debates now. Earth has a history that's pretty problematic, and we can talk about that. But we use debates, we compromise, we find lasting peace. And this woman says, look, that all sounds great and all, but that doesn't change the situation here. And quite frankly, we need to make sure we survive and the other side don't kill us. So the bigger stick is what works. And I kind of love that he says, look, if that's the only language you're going to understand, then that's how I'll talk to. Yeah. I've got the bigger stick. And he's like, Enterprise, like, show yourself. And the Enterprise comes down into orbit, into the sky, and everyone can see it. And it works from one, obviously he's saying, yeah, we have weapons that could wipe you all out. So, we're putting a stop to this fighting right now. But two, it's also the idea that, and you get this montage that I actually really like, is that people all over the planet are inspired because they see a goddamn spaceship in the sky. So you see children drawing it, you see scientists and like believers, like almost like the Sarus of this world are like, hey.
Or like the people who watch Star Trek growing up and are we're inspired by science fiction, very much like the speech that Una gives in the beginning of the episode. Yeah. So this episode is really well written. I really love all of this. And if anyone hasn't seen The Day the Earth Stood Still, I mean, the premise is that humans develop nuclear weapons, bombs, and because we are actively using them.
Which, for the record, is not just in the movie. It was actually made at a time just after nuclear bombs had become a thing.
And an alien comes down in a spaceship with a very threatening looking robot behind it. Well, for the time. And says, look, you guys have technology and now we're watching, because if you have this technology, that means you're a threat. You can use it to destroy yourselves. You may even use it to destroy us. So we're watching. And just so you know, we're here. We're more powerful than you. So it is very much, and it's also, he's also there not to just be a warning to that, but to try to convince people not to kill themselves with this weapon. Yeah, this technology.
I mean, obviously, he also makes it clear that we're here to help you move forward now too. Now that you're interacting with us, we'll help you. Like we can be of assistance. Yeah. But he also, to try and make his point, after the ship's there, he beams back down to their debate, and obviously they all freak out because he beams in the middle of them, so he just sort of like appears. But he shows them some of Earth's history from like the 21st century. He talks about what turned into World War III. Is that now? I know there's been references to like a nuke at least once or twice in Star Trek in the 21st century. I don't know if they've ever shown me quite the Terminator 3 thing, because during this like footage you see like lots of mushroom clouds going off, and Earth was like, oh yeah, things got really bad during, because he mentioned the Eugenics War. And then he says that turned into World War III, and I'm like, okay. So it's actually quite I mean, again, I've not watched the Picard finale yet, but it's making me think, oh, so the time they're leaving in Picard is like got a lot of rough stuff ahead of it in the next century before it gets better.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, that's been referenced throughout other series as well, because there's always. They always go back to our time in Earth in like every Star Trek series. Mm-hmm. So, and then. Yeah, and nukes were brought up, I think, in the original series with the Balance of Terror. They talked about using nuclear bombs against the Romulans. I need
to keep my head on here, because I keep wanting to say San Diego, but it's Babylon 5 that San Diego got nuked in. So I need to separate that in my mind.
Yeah, so it's... so they mention a second civil war in America, which, I don't think will happen in real life, but I understand why it's in here. Like there is tension, there's a very us versus them.
You can see why it's easy to write that in. It's believable enough in the context of a fictional show that it could go that way.
Right. So this is escalating to a point where eventually and plus the Eugenics War, which obviously won't happen in real life. And then that escalates to World War III, which we've always known has been a thing in Earth's past in Star Trek. And and after World War III, we get Zefram Cochrane, and everything becomes paradise after that.
Yeah. No,
we
I
have
really
to get through these dark ages, and it'd be nice if another civilization doesn't have to do that.
Yeah, I mean that's the point. He's like, hey, look, we went through this horrible period, and we're trying to tell you not to, and you seem determined to use this to kill each other. So how about you don't? And. He sort of like finishes this speech, and as he's speaking, goes to all these other characters, the children and classrooms and like scientists and people who are inspired and are drawing. There's even like a religious person holds up like an effigy of the Enterprise at one point. And I like that it doesn't like give us a scene of these leaders agreeing to anything. It just makes this point that he's inspiring them enough and warning them enough that the seed is planted, that changes now. This will not go as badly here now just because they have stepped in. And because that's the thing, before he makes the big stick argument and like shows the Enterprise off, he sort of has this little thing where he says to himself, like, it's one thing like believing in the rule, but you also have to be willing to break it, and like for the reasons why it's in place in the first place. So he does. And there's an arc for this episode, because Pike's arc for this episode and the speech he gives here, he even mentions, I've seen in some way my own, my ending, my future. He doesn't say death, I don't think, in the scene, but we know that's what he's talking about.
He says the death of who he is now.
Yeah. And he's like, you can be scared, and the Noonien Singh's character, also when she's talking about her backstory, saying she survived her backstory because she was the only one who believed she could die, and everyone else doesn't. Most people don't believe they can die until the final moment where they're going to. You think you're invincible, and that's something a lot of people go through at various points in their life, especially when you're a kid and a teenager. You don't think anything can happen to you, and someone.
Oh, yeah. I'm only just starting to realize now that I could die.
Right. So, and this is kind of like, you're going to go, in theory, go into this horrible situation at some point, but that could be a long time, right? We know roughly how long it is, but that could be a long time. So. You can do so much good and live such a happy life until that point, so don't be scared. That like living in fear and that there's only one outcome, and that's the problem with this. This civilization, this civil war, is that they're just assuming the other side's going to destroy them, so they have to have the bigger stick. They have to keep fighting. They can't just stop and make the future the better version of what it could be. So it fits into the theme of the episode. So when he makes a speech, and he actually says. Towards the end, he actually does the speech, because he says it in the opening titles, the classic Star Trek speech, but he says it in the episode. He actually gives the speech to the crew, what the Enterprise is. He's like, 5-year mission, seek out new worlds and civilizations, blah blah blah. He does the whole thing, and cool. it feels fitting, because obviously lots of the movies end with that speech. It ends of some first episodes have ended with that speech, but it's sort of done this narration way where it doesn't necessarily need to be Like are they actually saying it into people in the show? It is kind of fitting that Pike, who is technically the original captain of the Enterprise, the original Star Trek. Obviously, most people didn't see the cage till later, right? That was the thing that came later. That's kind of neat. He gets to say it to people.
Yes. He didn't write it, though.
That's fine.
Jonathan Archer wrote it.
That's okay. That's perfectly fine. But it works. It works in the context of the episode. So you see the alien dude beam on. Also, there was a reference to a Kirk. The twist, of course, is
they kept teasing Kirk, and I kept going because we know that he's coming, right? Because it was leaked. It was leaked that he was going to be there.
But it's not James T. Kirk. Anyway. This is his brother.
Yeah, his mustachioed brother.
Yes, which I actually think it's a shame that he is coming, because I actually think a neat way around. Like, you get to have a Kirk and say the name Kirk a lot, but you get to separate yourself. Even though Shatner, as you said to me beforehand, that he played this mustached version of his brother in an episode of the original series, it's easier to separate it because it's not actually James Kirk, it's the brother. So
yeah, it was a nice tease, because we kept, we don't know too much about like Pike and Kirk together, but because of the Kelvin timeline films, like, we do see that relationship a bit in its own way. So we're like, oh, like, he's asked for Kirk, he wants Lieutenant Kirk to be here, so we think that he has that relationship with James Kirk, but actually it's his brother Sam. Yeah,
so that was neat. And what we were talking about earlier, so we sort of glossed over the sort of the actiony plot in the middle of the episode, which is the characters have to infiltrate to try and find where Riley, that's the first officer's name, who's she was just number 1 on Discovery. I don't think we ever talked about her name that much in that show, which is why I thought
they said her first name was Una, which is an homage to a writer for Star Trek, who I think she's currently writing some of the new shows, but she's been writing novels for Trek for a while.
Oh, that's cool. Well, they're going to find her, but obviously it's like, well, we shouldn't make, because at this point they're still upholding Prime Directive, right? So we can't just go down and talk to them, so we have to blend in. So luckily Dr. Man and Nurse Chapel have got a concoction to like turn them into this alien species, and it sets up that because Spock is Vulcan and half human, that it's a little harder to work with him, so it kind of starts to wear off quite quickly. So we get some fun scenes later of his ears starting to come back, and
in the elevator with the really flirty alien lady.
Oh yeah, that alien lady is really
she
into
had the
Pike.
hots for everyone.
Yeah, she was giving Pike the eye, and then
definitely
until Spock's ears started acting up, and she was like, "Oh, that's weird."
She was like my favorite extra in the whole thing. She had great reactions.
What do I like about that? I love this idea that they're going to do a little bit of a Kirk thing with Pike, and the ladies, like, whenever they go to a planet, the lady wants him.
Yeah, he's just super horny.
Yeah.
They're just super horny for him.
Yeah. I'm okay with, because like the other shows don't really have, like, it wouldn't fit in the other shows they have right now, but it...
Well, yeah. I mean, they had Riker before take over that role.
Yeah.
But
so I'm okay with that being part of Trek. It's like sort of like, just textures. You have one character who, no matter what planet they go to, all the ladies or men want them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
But
we know he's destined to be with the woman from Talos 4.
Yes. So what I did like though, so we have this fun plot where they go down and Noonien Singh actually distracts 2 of the guards that they have to get past, and she's like, "Come on, Spock, they're next. Come on, that death grip thing. Come on, get the grip going." The Vulcan grip.
There's a nice line that he had where he's like, "It's a good thing that their physiology allowed for it to work."
That's true.
He just kind of assumed.
Yeah. But she's like, "Oh, it's good that you finally took the hint." But they go in, and because it's like, well, we can't just leave these 2 guys lying here, right? So because they take their outfits, right, so they can get going. They beam them back up to the Enterprise. Well, we'll just keep them sedated on the Enterprise, so they won't see anything or hear anything. They'll just not remember. Of course, apparently their physiology doesn't work so well with the sedatives, because the guys like start waking up within like 2 minutes once they're up.
Yes.
The line on tables. Yeah. Oh, no, say something. Sorry.
No, I was just laughing because he wakes up and goes, where am I? And immediately like runs away.
Yeah. Well, the other guy wakes up first, and like Nurse Chapel just dives and like sedates him. But then the second guy wakes up, and he's the one that I think goes on the run.
Right.
So she chases him like through all the hallways of the ship, and he actually gets to the turbolift. Like she has a bit of a standoff where she's like, "Hey, look, it's not what it looks like." Well, it kind of is, but he backs into the turbolift, and then it just reveals that Uhura was just like standing in there to the side, and manages to start like getting him to like relax and open up because she starts talking about a sport that's on his planet, and it's like, oh, this is showing.
He immediately like lights up too.
Oh yeah, he's so excited to talk about it.
Talking about football.
But I think it's a good little character because one, it shows that she's calm in a situation. It shows that as part of her job, she maybe researches whoever they're talking to or whatever when they're going to a planet.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense. And it has that fun moment at the end where when turbolift opens, when Chapel beams to the bridge because that's where it's going. He steps out and she just immediately knocks him out with a sedative, and they introduce each other. Oh, I'm the nurse, and I'm the new cadet on the bridge.
Right. Yeah, I love this scene with her because you're right. It just establishes, like, we get the line from Pike saying, "Oh, you're the like the prodigy or something," and then when we actually see her interact, we're just getting her being very good at her job, which is doing research about the planet that they're at, being able to calm this guy down by talking about, like, she's definitely cool in a situation where an alien that she's never met before is very like backed into a corner, like literally.
Yeah,
he could start flinging fists,
Yeah, he obviously there's a potential that how he may react, and he never actually is violent or anything, but he's obviously he's obviously scared. He's nervous. He's anxious.
But she knew exactly the right thing to say, or to just start talking about his culture and asking questions about it, and like he just like immediately lights up. And by the time they're both walking out of the turbo lift together, like he's just exiting happy and like almost in a skipping motion, distracted, like, oh yeah, and then doesn't even get to see the bridge before he gets sedated. And
for the record, like, I think he's understandably under duress, like at this moment.
I'm sure, yeah.
Like I'd be freaking
this
out
isn't
too.
like Fire in the Sky waking up or anything, but like, it's still an alien abduction.
Yeah, you wake up, you're on a spaceship, and like everyone looks different. You've never seen another humanoid species before.
Yeah,
you know, you would be freaking out. So
no, but it was a great way to establish both Uhura and Nurse Chapel. Like we've gotten so much personality from her. Yeah, I think she might be the one who invented the whole like cosmetic design altering thing, where you don't have to, instead of gluing prosthetics to a human to make them look more alien, like they actually just changed the physiology, and they established that it's very painful. Which I love, that when it starts to fail on Spock, he's very cool and calm and says that it's excruciating, and then breaks and does a full-on like search for Spock scream, which I loved. I thought that was so great.
Yeah, I think this little section, like, because up until this point we got a little introduction to her, we got a little introduction to Nurse Chapel, but it was this scene for the two of them that really gave them both a bit of real character. And personality, and it felt as okay, that was a really good introduction to both of those characters. I think Ortega's doesn't get as much, but it cuts back to her enough when she's the one like sort of like manning the bridge when everyone else is doing stuff. That it's like, okay, I'm starting to recognize this face and recognize that at the very least she's going to have this kind of like, not sarcastic, but she has this kind of like, all this shit goes down when I'm the one like taking care of the bridge. Yeah. So it's like, okay, I'm getting a little bit of personality, which is more than I could, like, again, just compare. I think Ortega's is probably the best comparison for the bridge crew of the Discovery, in that you could argue they're very similar at a point now, but I think this did a better job in one episode. The Discovery bridge crew are maybe at a similar level now after 4 seasons, but that's saying something.
Maybe.
But
I know the names of Detmer and Olusanmokun now, but
took a long time. It did take a long time.
Personality, I don't really have personality too much yet.
Yeah.
I have a couple things that they're into, but that's about it.
Yeah, I would say that Ortega's and Dr. Mbenga, I think I'm saying his name right. I'd say they're kind of that C tier, I guess, if we want to like grade it even more. But
but we'll see. We'll see how this is just based on the first episode, and not everybody got really a full scene to shine.
Absolutely, it's only one episode, and I think just doing it with 2 of these B characters is like almost like a promise, like, hey, this is more people are going to get some time and get some personality. So
right, especially two that we already know their names for too,
which it makes some sense as well that they'll start with those because of the ones that we recognize in some level, even if Nurse Chapel feels like a completely different character. Like she does personality wise.
Yeah, she does.
Uhura feels, I think, obviously because she was one of the main group of the characters on the original series, they've maybe taken more great care to make her like feel like the same Uhura, and she honestly she kind of does, like the way she smiled at Pike, I think, when she was
it's just the earball grabbing thing,
Yeah.
It's good.
Maybe it is just that, but I was like, yeah, that feels like Uhura. Like I can definitely.
There's enough of there where I'm just like, yeah, it's fine. Like it feels more like Uhura than Zoe Saldana, but I still like Zoe Saldana in those films too.
Yeah, this woman feels a lot more like Nichelle Nichols.
Yes,
there you
good.
go. Yes, I got it in one. This woman feels a bit more like she was cast to kind of like evoke her, whereas Zoe Saldana was like, oh, like let's just get the young hot actress.
Let's get the pretty one.
Yeah, who's available at the time, because she I mean. Or it wasn't even that she was like the new hot star yet when they were making it, but they knew she was going to be in Avatar, so which was the same year. So it was like
right, okay.
There was like a conscious effort there probably with her, but yeah. So I'm pretty positive all in. Like if anything, little just a little filmmaking thing here or there. Although definitely didn't piss me off as much with like the stylistic choices that Picard and Discovery do. There wasn't as much in the way of like Dutch angles and over the top things. It was a bit more reserved.
No, and the I would say like the excitement from the episode comes from things that are very small. Chasing the escaped guy, but it wasn't the same kind of tension of
that was a playful scene, and then the actual drama of the episode is two things. It's the conflict on the planet, which is good because I like Star Trek best when it's dealing with moral choices and dealing with like things like that. Yeah. But it's also Pike getting over his fear and like becoming Pike again. Like, so you know what? No, I'm still going to be me, because ultimately, like, if I'm just scared of death the whole time, like, what am I accomplishing? Like, you have to live every day like you like it is your last or whatever, right? So.
Yeah, like you still have a legacy you can leave behind, and you can do more to help people still. Like we all are going to go one day. Like it doesn't mean we just give up now, Yeah.
So dare I say I am pretty positive it could go downhill. Like, who knows? And because it is very episodic, it might just be a case of, much like some of the older Trek shows,
it might just get a stinker, and then the next one will be great.
That might be the thing that happens. And that might be the benefit of not sticking to some overly serialized. And I love serialized TV when it's good. Modern Trek has not been particularly good at it, though. And at times has been downright terrible at it, so...
Yeah, this could also be like we are coming off maybe what could be the worst season of Star Trek of all time.
That does not bode well for the finale that I've not watched yet.
I won't say anything, but just overall, that season was just so disappointing. I thought it was a good pilot, or a good premiere. Good season premiere, or like a season premiere that had potential. But the warning signs were still there for it. This one, I don't really see too many warning signs. I mean, it's trying to be like a hotter, sexier Star Trek, than maybe the older ones are still. But
it's still very much.
It doesn't really bother me too much. Like I did like the moment, when I don't love the Spock and T'Pring like getting it on, but. It was kind of funny when Pike asked him if he was naked.
Yeah, it was all right. I think it is obviously more of a throwback to old Trek. But the funny thing is, though, is that at this point, and not just because of the other Star Trek shows, this is actually more unique now to have a Star Trek show be this. One, because the other Star Trek shows are all obsessed with being the serialized thing now, but also because TV, by and large, like unless you're watching like all of like CBS's like cop shows, most TV has moved on to being more serialized. So
yeah, totally, because that's what's been successful. I mean, since The Sopranos, like everything is kind of, or maybe even The Wire, like everything's just changed. TV has changed forever because of that. Now it's like we got to tell these stories that go throughout the whole thing. And, sometimes they are very successful, and sometimes it's just like, I've been rewatching Quantum Leap because it's like comfort food, to just sit down and get 2 episodes a day of just this one little story that they're just going to go through, and everything's going to reset and be fine by the end, but that's okay. Like, you're still there for the fun journey and all the rules.
Yeah, my first TV love, obviously, as everyone knows, is the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And the thing about mid-90s TV like that was that there was kind of a healthy balance where it had episodes of the week where it was like just like the monster, but there was like a season-long arc where 5 or 6 episodes out of 22 would be heavily devoted to what the season plot was. And it was a healthy kind of mix of like having something that kept you coming back, and there was like themes that kept going, but there was also all these great standalone episodes and some not so great standalone episodes. But so I kind of came into TV and fell in love with TV at a time when it was a bit of a mix of the two. And obviously super serialized stuff when it is great. When you have right now the final season of Better Call Saul, and everything coming together after 6, we're on season 6 now, and it's paying off things, and characters who have been in the show since the first season are meeting for the first time now. And it feels so fulfilling, and everything has so much weight to it. And when it clicks, it's so good. But when it doesn't click and you don't care about what the overall show is doing, it's just kind of like, well, this is just dead on arrival, and I don't I'm done now. I don't care. Yeah. So, but yeah.
No, I agree. This could be very cool because of just the anthology sort of setup here, where we know we're going to go. It's called Strange New Worlds. We know we're going to go see new planets every week, and the nice thing about this, as opposed to the older Treks or even the older TV shows that were like this, is that now there probably are consequences for characters specific to them, that it's going to keep going, that they'll remember. It's not just a complete reset every episode.
Of course. And Next Generation did start to do a little bit of that, where some of the character things did last.
The Borg stuff would come back, but for the most part, you watch The Inner Light, that should change a man forever. And it really doesn't.
No, sure. I mean, that's a good example of them not sticking to something. But I would say, by and large, a lot of character things. The fact that they brought, Worf had a son, and then the son became a recurring character. Things like that. The original series, by and large, did nothing like that. Harry Mudd came back for an episode, and that's it. That's the only thing that ever came back.
Yeah, basically.
Right. So Next Gen, by comparison, had so many threads that came back. Even though by today's standards, it's a very episode by episode show. So, no, much like shows like the 90s, you want the character stuff to sort of stick around. You want... This thing with Pike is still going to come up, and there was a little, this season on Strange New... There was a little trailer at the end for the rest of the season. It did seem like some of that stuff is going to keep coming up, and that's cool. So, yeah, have the stories impact the characters, have that be something that you can feel is a shared experience that is going to still be there when they do their next adventure. But still, by and large, we're going to do a new story each week that has a point, and we'll finish. Maybe there'll be a 2-parter here and there if they want, and that'll be cool. But that's what they're going to do. And at this point, that's kind of refreshing. Honestly, there was a time when it was the opposite, when serialized was the cool thing that you wished more shows did, because everything was, episode of the week. There's a place for both, and a healthy balance of both. And
I mean, that's why those CSI shows get so many spin-offs and last forever, is because people still long for that. Usually people of a certain age, but they still long for that kind of storytelling.
I mean,
it's just easy, you don't have to invest in 1 hour. And if you miss an episode, whatever, you'll catch it. Well, sure, it repeats but
I'd also like them to be good. Those shows are very repetitive and just
Sure.
At what point, how many times have they done almost the exact same killer?
I've watched all of House. It's an easy show to watch, but even that show just gets pretty redundant by the end.
Oh, sure, yeah. Whereas the good thing about something like Star Trek and science fiction is that there is a lot of possibilities, and you can keep.
You can just literally make shit up, or you can draw from episodes from early series. It's been around for 55 years now.
You can make shit up, but that's not the important part. The important part is that you can tackle almost any subject. You can tackle almost any theme, and then just package it in whatever sci-fi plot you want to package it in. So that's why you can do so much of it. So here we are.
Great start. Really looking forward to this season.
Here's to hopefully being positive for the duration of season 1 of Strange New Worlds.
Yep.
And all this time you were like, oh, it's the Pike show. I'm not feeling good about it. It's the Pike show.
I just did not like Pike in season 2 of Discovery.
Yes. But
she was too like, hey, I'm your cool best friend dad. I'm like, no, you're not.
But you're eating. Well, I imagine it's going down fairly easily, but you're eating a little bit of crow, and it's nice.
No.
A little bit of crow.
No. Like he still wasn't good in Discovery season 2.
I to quote the great Tommy Wiseau, I disagree. So but there you go. That's Strange New Worlds episode 1. Let us know what you think of it in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell, all that stuff. Helps us out a lot. Of course, we've been reviewing the Picard season 2. It's been a bit negative the last few episodes. The finale will be up in the next day or two, so look forward to that. Of course, me and Tara are also working through Babylon 5 on a weekly basis, so go check out those if you want to dive into that. And we're getting towards the end of season 4 now. There's 5 seasons of that, so that'll probably get replaced with another sci-fi show afterwards. And all of a sudden, Quantum Leap is like relevant because there's a new version coming, which is set in continuity with the original show, so that's up for contention.
Yeah, no Dean Stockwell though, so it won't be the same.
That's true. Or Bakula.
Rest in power.
That's not ignore Bakula's involvement.
He could be in the show.
He can. In fact, me and Connor, we just recorded the news and we said he probably will be. They'll probably cart him out.
He's been talking about coming back to Babylon, or not Babylon 5, to Quantum Leap for decades. So I'm sure that it's literally been on the news that Quantum Leap is going to come back any day now in a movie or a show.
And it's set in continuity. It's not a remake. It's like they acknowledge in the premise that the original happened 30 years ago. So
yeah.
Maybe they'll.
Hey, I'll watch it again. I love it. I mean, I'm watching it right now, but and I'm nearly done with it. And season 5 is bonkers.
Yeah, but I don't think it matters that you've already seen it to review that because it's all.
No. And I've watched it before previously, just not like
in order.
Episode by episode. Yeah, in order before. So this is the first time I've sat down just to do that.
But anyway, go check out other stuff that we do on the channel. Go over to Male Fuzz Movies to check out The Ace, the Atomic Cinema Experiment, which is the sci-fi movie podcast that me and Tara do. And we talk about a movie every week, so go check out that. But that is us. So thank you once again for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, keep watching Star Trek, and hit it.